I'm Monica, 32 years old, and I built a multi-million-dollar educational technology company from nothing. At 15, my parents abandoned me to a foster home so they could travel the world with my perfect younger sister, Lily. They thought I'd amount to nothing, just a burden they could discard. But their greatest mistake became my most powerful motivation. I transformed that heartbreak into an empire. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button to hear how I went from rejected daughter to CEO, whose success story left those who abandoned me speechless. I grew up in a spacious colonial-style home in suburban Boston. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, James, was a respected cardiovascular surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. My mother, Diana, taught sociology at Boston University. I was their firstborn, and for the first 5 years of my life, I enjoyed their undivided attention. Everything changed when Lily was born. I still remember the day they brought her home from the hospital. My father cradled her as if she were made of the most delicate crystal, his eyes shining with a pride I'd never seen before. "Monica, meet your little sister," he said. "Isn't she absolutely perfect?" Perfect. That word would define Lily's existence in our family. From her first smile to her first steps, every milestone was celebrated like a national holiday. My mother documented everything in elaborate baby books and professional photo shoots. When I asked where my baby book was, she claimed they'd been too busy with their careers when I was an infant. By the time I turned 8 and Lily was 3, the pattern had solidified. My birthday parties were simple affairs with a store-bought cake and maybe 2 friends over. For Lily's 3rd birthday, they transformed our backyard into a Disney Princess Wonderland, complete with a hired Cinderella and custom-made dress for the birthday girl. The family photo wall in our hallway told the story clearly. Lily dominated the display with professional portraits, showcasing her golden curls and bright blue eyes. The few photos including me were usually group shots, where I stood at the edge, sometimes partially cropped out. I once overheard my mother telling a visitor, "Lily is so photogenic, she got all the good genes." Weekends in our house revolved around Lily's activities and interests. My father, despite his demanding schedule at the hospital, always found time to teach Lily chess, take her fishing, or help with her science projects. When I asked him to attend my debate competition, he checked his calendar and sighed. "I'm sorry, Monica, I have back-to-back surgeries that day." My mother was less subtle about her preference. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became her constant refrain. When I brought home straight A's, she'd glance at the report card and say, "That's nice. But did you know Lily's teacher says she has the highest emotional intelligence she's ever seen in a child?" When I struggled to make friends after changing schools in 4th grade, my mother told me Lily would have had a dozen new friends by now. "You should smile more like she does." Christmas mornings were particularly painful. One year when I was 12 and Lily was 7, I watched her unwrap an American Girl doll collection, a new tablet, and designer clothes. My pile contained practical items, school supplies, a plain winter coat, and socks. When I failed to show sufficient gratitude, my mother pulled me aside and whispered, "Don't ruin your sister's Christmas with your attitude problem." I developed strategies to cope with my second-class status. I started keeping a journal, pouring my confused feelings onto the pages when no one would listen. I found sanctuary at my neighbor Ashley's house, where her parents treated everyone equally and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and achievements. At school, I threw myself into academics and extracurricular activities, hoping excellence would finally earn my parents' approval. I stayed up late studying, joined the debate team, and volunteered at the local animal shelter. The shelter director praised my dedication, but when I mentioned it at dinner, my parents were discussing Lily's ballet recital before I finished my sentence. The most blatant betrayal came during my middle school graduation. As 8th grade class president, I was scheduled to give a speech. I'd practiced for weeks, hoping to make my parents proud. The morning of the ceremony, my mother announced they wouldn't be attending. Lily's dance studio added a last-minute showcase, and we can't miss it. "You understand, right? You're always so independent." I gave my speech to an audience missing the only people whose approval I truly wanted. Ashley's parents recorded it for me and took me for ice cream afterward. "Your speech was wonderful, Monica," Ashley's mother said, squeezing my shoulder. "We're very proud of you." I kept the recording but never showed it to my parents. They never asked to see it. By 14, I had largely accepted my place in the family hierarchy. While I never stopped hoping for my parents' love and approval, I began building an identity separate from their validation. School became my sanctuary, a place where merit was based on performance rather than parental preference. My freshman year of high school, I discovered a passion for business and entrepreneurship during a career exploration seminar. Something clicked when our teacher, Mr. Sawyer, discussed how entrepreneurs identified problems and created solutions. The best businesses fill a need that others haven't recognized, he explained. For our final project, we had to develop a basic business plan. While other students proposed typical teen ventures like lawn mowing services or babysitting, I noticed a persistent problem at our high school students. Struggling with difficult subjects had nowhere to turn when teachers were unavailable. I created a comprehensive plan for student-led study guides, tailored to specific courses at our school. The guides would break down complex concepts into accessible language, include practice problems with step-by-step solutions, and feature memory tricks for important information. I calculated costs, projected revenue, and even designed sample pages. When I presented my project, Mr. Sawyer was impressed. "Monica, this shows remarkable insight," he said. "You've identified a genuine need and created a viable solution. Have you considered actually implementing this?" I brought my A+ project home, hoping my mother might finally show interest in something I had accomplished. She glanced at it while cooking dinner, her attention clearly elsewhere. "That's nice, honey," she said, setting it aside to check her phone. "Did you see the email from Lily's science teacher? Her volcano model won first place in the district science fair. We need to take her shopping this weekend for a special celebration dinner." I stood there, project in hand, invisible as always. "My teacher thinks I could actually start this business," I said, trying once more. "He says I have a real talent for entrepreneurship." My mother looked up briefly. "Monica, business is cutthroat and competitive. You're too sensitive for that world. Maybe focus on something more realistic for someone like you." Someone like you. The words stung more than she knew. Our family dinners had become a showcase for Lily's accomplishments. My father would ask Lily detailed questions about her day, laughing at her stories and praising her smallest achievements. When his attention occasionally turned to me, it was usually a quick, "How was school?" before returning to Lily. One evening, after Lily had regaled them with stories about being selected for the lead in the school play, I attempted to share news about being chosen for a competitive student leadership conference. "That's nice," my father said absently before turning back to Lily. "Now tell us more about your costume for the play, princess." I set down my fork loudly. "Do you even care what I do? Do you even see me sitting here?" The table fell silent. My mother's face hardened. "Monica, don't be dramatic. Of course we care about your activities. Name one thing I've done this month that you actually paid attention to," I challenged. My father's expression darkened. "This attitude is exactly the problem, Monica. Your sister manages to share her accomplishments without demanding attention or creating scenes. Because you give her attention freely, I have to beg for scraps of acknowledgement." "That's enough," my mother snapped. "Go to your room. When you're ready to participate pleasantly in family discussions, you can rejoin us." I spent that evening alone in my room, hearing laughter drift up from the kitchen where dinner continued without me. I was not just invisible in my family, I was disposable. Weeks later, I overheard my parents discussing vacation plans late one night as I passed their bedroom door. "The world tour package is perfect," my mother was saying excitedly. "All the destinations James and I always dreamed of visiting." "The cost is considerable," my father replied. "But I suppose we've earned this. We work hard, and the experiences will be invaluable for Lily's development. No mention of me." I paused, wondering if perhaps they were planning a surprise. Maybe this would be the gesture that finally showed they valued me too. I clung to that hope despite all evidence to the contrary. As my isolation at home deepened, my friendship with Ashley became increasingly important. Her house 2 doors down became my refuge. Her parents greeted me warmly, asked about my interests, and actually listened to my answers. They had 3 children, and remarkably, they seemed to love each one for their unique qualities. "My parents are talking about some big trip," I confided to Ashley one afternoon as we studied in her bedroom. "They haven't mentioned me being included, though." Ashley frowned. "That doesn't seem right. Have you asked them about it?" I shook my head. "I'm afraid of the answer." My 15th birthday arrived with minimal fanfare. My mother made a basic chocolate cake, and my father gave me a gift card to a bookstore. Lily had made me a card with glitter that spelled out "Happy Birthday, Big Sis," the most thoughtful gesture of the day. That night, I heard my parents talking again, their voices rising with excitement about passport applications and vaccinations. I went to sleep wondering where I would fit in their grand plans, never imagining they weren't planning to fit me in at all. A week after my birthday, my parents called a family meeting. We rarely had these. They were reserved for major announcements or decisions. I walked into our living room with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. My father stood by the fireplace, looking uncharacteristically animated. My mother sat on the sofa with Lily, who was practically bouncing with excitement. They gestured for me to sit in the armchair across from them. "We have amazing news." My father began, his face glowing with enthusiasm I rarely saw. "After years of hard work, your mother and I have decided to take a sabbatical from our jobs for a grand adventure." My mother nodded eagerly. "We've booked a year-long world tour, Asia, Europe, Africa, South America, all the places we've dreamed of visiting. We leave in 2 weeks." I felt a momentary surge of excitement. A world tour sounded incredible, a chance for us to bond as a family, away from the routines that had cemented my outsider status. Maybe in new surroundings they would finally see me. "Wow, that sounds amazing," I said, smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. "What about school? Will we have tutors or do online classes?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Well, Monica," my father said, his voice taking on a clinical tone he usually reserved for discussing difficult diagnoses. "That's the second part of our announcement." My mother reached over to hold Lily's hand. "Lily will be coming with us, of course. She's at an impressionable age where world travel will be formative for her development. Her school has approved the educational travel plan I created." I waited for them to continue to explain my role in this plan. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "And me?" I finally asked, my voice small. My father cleared his throat. "Monica, we've given this a lot of thought. You're 15 now, nearly an adult. You've always been so independent." "What your father is saying," my mother interjected, "is that we've made arrangements for you to stay with a foster family while we're away." The words hit me like a physical blow. Foster family. They were leaving me behind, abandoning me. "Foster family," I repeated, certain I'd misheard. "Like foster care for unwanted children." "Don't be so dramatic," my mother sighed. "The Thompsons are a respectable family recommended by our church. They've agreed to take you in during our absence." "But why can't I come with you?" My voice cracked as the reality began to sink in. My father looked uncomfortable. "Monica, let's be honest. You're at a difficult age. You've been moody, confrontational, and frankly, your attitude would make travelling together unpleasant for everyone. Also," my mother added, "you're in high school now. Interrupting your education could impact your college prospects. The Thompsons have 2 other foster children around your age, so you'll have companions. They're very structured, which will be good for you." Tears welled in my eyes. "You're abandoning me because I'm difficult while taking Lily on a dream vacation. Do you even hear yourselves? This is exactly the kind of overreaction we're talking about," my mother snapped. "Lily accepts family decisions without this kind of drama." I looked at Lily, who was studying her hands in her lap, her expression troubled for once. "Do you think this is fair?" I asked her directly. Before she could answer, my father cut in. "Don't put your sister in the middle of this. The decision is made, Monica. We'll maintain contact through weekly emails, and you can follow our journey on the family blog." "You can't do this," I whispered, shock giving way to panic. "Please don't do this." "It's already arranged," my mother said firmly. "You'll be meeting the Thompsons this weekend, and we'll help you pack appropriate belongings next week." "What about my friends? My activities? My whole life is here." The desperation in my voice would have moved strangers, but my parents remained unmoved. "You'll make new friends," my father said dismissively. "The Thompsons live just 30 minutes away, so you'll even be attending the same school." I began to sob, the full weight of their rejection crushing me. "Why don't you love me like you love Lily? What did I do wrong?" My mother's expression hardened. "This conversation is becoming unproductive. We expect you to accept this decision maturely. The Thompsons are doing us a significant favour, and we expect you to be on your best behaviour." They ended the meeting despite my continued protests. As they left the room discussing dinner plans, I remained frozen in the armchair, my world shattered around me. The next few days passed in a blur of grief and disbelief. I alternated between pleading with my parents to reconsider and shutting myself in my room in silent protest. Nothing swayed them. That weekend, they drove me to meet the Thompsons. The couple lived in a small, neat house in a working-class neighbourhood I'd never visited. Mr. Thompson was a postal worker with a stern demeanour and thinning hair. Mrs. Thompson, a part-time school secretary, greeted us with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Monica, these are your new guardians," my father said formally. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson have kindly agreed to provide you with structure and guidance during our absence." The Thompsons showed me the small bedroom I would share with another foster girl named Jessica. The twin bed in the corner had a thin mattress and plain white bedding. A small desk and shared closet completed the sparse furnishings. "Breakfast is at 6 a.m. sharp," Mrs. Thompson explained. "We attend church services Wednesday evenings and twice on Sundays. There's a chore chart in the kitchen that Jessica will help you understand." I nodded numbly, unable to process that this would be my reality, while my family explored the wonders of the world without me. The day of their departure arrived with brutal swiftness. My mother supervised as I packed 2 suitcases with practical clothing and a few personal items. Family photos were deemed unnecessary, since I knew what everyone looked like. As they loaded their luggage into the taxi that would take them to the airport, Lily approached me in the driveway. "I'll miss you," she said quietly, genuine sadness in her eyes. For a moment, I saw a flash of the sister I might have had in different circumstances. Then my mother called Lily to hurry, and the moment passed. My father's parting words were not of love, but of expectations. "Remember to follow the Thompsons' rules. Your behaviour reflects on our family." My mother added, "We've provided the Thompsons with your medical information and school records. Try not to cause problems." Then they were gone, driving away without a backward glance. I stood in the Thompsons' driveway watching the taxi disappear around the corner, taking my family to adventures I would only hear about secondhand. That night, in a strange bed in a strange house, I cried silently into my pillow, careful not to wake Jessica. I had never felt so utterly alone, so completely unwanted by the people who were supposed to love me most. Life at the Thompsons' house quickly proved to be even worse than I had feared. Their home ran with military precision and cold efficiency, devoid of warmth or genuine care. The rules were endless and often arbitrary. No phone usage after 7 p.m, no reading fiction books outside of approved religious texts, no speaking during meals unless spoken to. Mr. Thompson, a tall man with permanent frown lines, seemed to view foster children as burdens to be tolerated for the monthly government check. He rarely addressed me directly, referring to me as the new one when speaking to his wife. When he did speak to me, it was usually to criticize my posture, my tone, or my attitude problem. "Stand up straight," he would bark across the dinner table. "Your slouching shows disrespect and poor character." Mrs. Thompson maintained a facade of polite concern when social workers visited, but her true nature emerged in daily interactions. She clearly favoured the youngest foster child, a 7-year-old boy named Timmy, while treating Jessica and me like unwelcome house guests. "Monica, the bathroom isn't going to clean itself," she would say, interrupting my homework. Meanwhile, Timmy played video games undisturbed in the living room. Jessica, a quiet girl who had been in the system for years, warned me on my first night. "Don't expect fairness here. Keep your head down, follow the rules, and count the days until you can leave." I tried desperately to contact my parents during those first weeks. My calls went unanswered. My emails received brief delayed responses. "Settling into our apartment in Tokyo. Very busy with sightseeing. Hope you're adjusting well." No questions about how I was coping. No acknowledgement of the trauma they had inflicted by abandoning me. After 3 weeks, they finally established a pattern of communication. A weekly group email sent to extended family and friends detailing their adventures with me, included on the recipient list as an afterthought. I devoured these messages despite the pain they caused, searching for some indication that they missed me or regretted their decision. Instead, I found photos of my family looking happier than I'd ever seen them. My father with his arm around Lily at the Great Wall of China. My mother and Lily in matching kimonos in Kyoto. The 3 of them beaming in front of Mount Fuji, forming a perfect family unit, without the inconvenient 4th member they had discarded. The captions were salt in my wounds, making memories that will last a lifetime. The adventure of our dreams with our amazing daughter. Never a mention of me, the daughter they had left behind. Social media became both my lifeline and my tormentor. I created a secret Instagram account using the Thompsons' Wi-Fi during permitted hours to follow my family's journey through the photos they posted publicly. Each smiling image confirmed what I had always suspected: they were happier without me. My school performance began to suffer as depression took hold. Teachers who had known me as an engaged, high-achieving student now saw a withdrawn shell of that former self. My normally perfect grades, slipped to B's, then C's. I stopped raising my hand in class. I ate lunch alone, having lost touch with my previous friends due to the Thompsons' restrictions on socializing. The school counselor, Mrs. Bennett, called me into her office after my English teacher reported concerns about my drastic change in behavior. "Monica, your teachers are worried about you," she said gently. "They say you've changed this semester. Would you like to talk about what's going on?" I considered lying, making up some benign excuse for my academic decline. But the weight of pretending everything was fine suddenly felt unbearable. "My parents abandoned me," I said flatly. "They left me with a foster family so they could travel the world with my sister. They didn't want me anymore." Mrs. Bennett's shocked expression would have been comical under different circumstances. She clearly had expected typical teenage problems, boyfriend troubles or friendship drama, not parental abandonment. "I see," she said, finally composing herself. "That's an incredibly difficult situation, Monica. How long will they be gone?" "A year, maybe longer. They weren't specific about when or if they're coming back for me." We talked for the full period with Mrs. Bennett promising to check in regularly and offering the school support resources. But her well-intentioned concern couldn't fix the gaping wound my parents had left. The lowest point came 3 months into my stay with the Thompsons. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find the house empty. A note on the refrigerator informed me they had taken Jessica and Timmy to a water park for the day. "There's sandwich material in the fridge. Be sure to complete your chores before we return." They hadn't even bothered to invite me. In their home for months and still an afterthought. That same day, scrolling through Instagram, I found a new photo posted by my mother. My family stood on a beach in Bali sunset, painting the sky behind them in brilliant oranges and pinks. The caption read, "Complete family adventure in paradise, #blessed, family complete, family complete." Without me, something broke inside me that day. I curled up on my bed and sobbed until no more tears would come. Then I lay there empty and hollow, staring at the ceiling until darkness fell. The following Monday, I walked into first period English class with swollen eyes after another sleepless night. We were studying poetry, and the teacher had asked us to analyse a poem about belonging and identity. When called upon, I opened my mouth to respond and instead burst into uncontrollable tears. The classroom fell silent as I gasped for breath between sobs, 15 years of feeling unwanted, pouring out in front of 25 stunned classmates. My English teacher, Ms. Russell, quickly dismissed the class to the library and sat with me until the storm of emotion subsided. "Would you like to tell me what's happening?" she asked, her voice kind but firm. Through hiccuping breaths, I told her everything. The lifelong favoritism, the abandonment, the foster home where I was merely tolerated the family that was complete without me. Ms. Russell listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. When I finished, she handed me a tissue and said words that would change the course of my life. "Monica, you cannot control what your parents have done, but you can control what you do next. And from what I've seen of you in class, even on your worst days, you are capable of extraordinary things." Ms. Russell's words became a turning point in my journey. Rather than just offering sympathy, she took concrete action to help me channel my pain into something productive. "I remember you mentioned a business project in your previous school," she said during one of our after-class meetings. "Tell me more about that." I described my study guide concept, surprised she had remembered this detail from our conversations. As I spoke, my old enthusiasm began to resurface. "Our school has a special entrepreneurship program for selected students," Ms. Russell informed me. "It's usually for juniors and seniors, but given your circumstances and the quality of your idea, I'd like to recommend you for early admission." For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. "Really? Do you think they'd accept me?" "I'm on the selection committee," she said with a small smile, "and we need more female entrepreneurs in the program." 2 weeks later, I was the youngest student in the Hawthorne High School Entrepreneurship Incubator. The program provided mentorship, basic startup resources, and academic credit for developing viable business ideas. My concept evolved quickly under the guidance of Mr. Patel, a local business owner who volunteered as a mentor. "Your study guide idea has potential," he acknowledged, "but it needs refinement to stand out in the marketplace." Together, we identified the unique selling proposition, study guides created by students who had recently excelled in the specific courses using language and examples that resonated with their peers. The guides would be course-specific and teacher-specific, addressing the exact curriculum and testing style of each class. During the program's networking event, I met Anthony, a junior, with exceptional coding skills but limited business acumen. We connected immediately over our complementary strengths. I could build a digital platform for your study guides, he offered. Make them interactive with practice quizzes and progress tracking. Are you proposing a partnership? I asked, surprised by his interest in my project. Anthony nodded enthusiastically. Your business concept plus my technical skills equals something neither of us could create alone. For the first time since my parents left, I felt something akin to excitement. Anthony and I spent hours in the school computer lab developing prototypes, oblivious to the time passing as we built something from nothing. The Thompsons were predictably dismissive of my entrepreneurial efforts. Business is no place for a young girl, Mr. Thompson declared at dinner when I mentioned the program. Better to focus on practical skills like cooking and keeping house. His narrow-minded comment only fueled my determination. Every dismissal, every doubt cast on my abilities became another brick in the foundation of my resolve. I would succeed not despite the people who underestimated me, but because of them. As Anthony and I developed our first digital study guides, a problem emerged. The Thompsons' strict curfew and limited computer access were hampering my ability to work on the project. After particularly heated argument, when Mr. Thompson called my business a waste of time that no one will ever pay for, I reached breaking point. That evening, I called Ashley, my friend, from my old neighborhood. We had maintained contact through occasional calls despite the distance and my restricted schedule. Things are getting worse here, I admitted, fighting back tears. I can't stay with the Thompsons anymore, but I have nowhere else to go. The next day, Ashley's mother called me. Monica, Ashley told us what's happening. We've discussed it as a family and we'd like to offer you our guest room for as long as you need it. The generosity overwhelmed me. Are you serious? That's so kind, but it's a huge responsibility. We always thought of you as part of our extended family, she said warmly, and no child should feel unwanted. We've already contacted the relevant authorities about becoming your temporary guardians. 2 weeks later, after a flurry of paperwork and a tense confrontation with the Thompsons, who seemed more concerned about losing their foster care payment than losing me, I moved into Ashley's home. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. The Jacksons' home was warm, chaotic, and loving. They had house rules, but they were reasonable and applied equally to everyone. Dinner conversations were lively with everyone's opinions valued. For the first time in years, I felt safe. With my basic emotional needs met, I threw myself into developing our business. Anthony and I finalized the first batch of digital study guides for the most challenging courses at our school. We priced them affordably at $7.99 each and launched with modest expectations. The response exceeded our wildest hopes. Within a week, we had sold over 50 guides. Students who purchased them began reporting improved test scores and better comprehension. Word spread quickly through the school grapevine. We need to expand to other subjects, Anthony said excitedly as we counted our first profit, and maybe even other schools in the district. The feeling of earning my own money that came from creating something valuable, was indescribable. Each sale validated not just our business concept, but my worth as a person. I wasn't the throwaway daughter anymore. I was a successful entrepreneur. My parents, meanwhile, continued their global adventure. Their communications remained sporadic and superficial. When I mentioned my business in an email, my mother's response was telling, "That sounds like a nice hobby, dear. Don't let it interfere with your schoolwork." A hobby. She couldn't conceive that her discarded daughter might be building something significant. Her dismissal only strengthened my resolve to prove her wrong. By the end of that semester, our study guide business had expanded to 3 neighboring high schools. We had developed a streamlined process, identifying top-performing students in each course, hiring them to create content based on our template, and having Anthony integrate their material into our digital platform. Our first significant profit, nearly $3,000, felt like vindication. Ashley's parents helped me open a business bank account and taught me about taxes and business record keeping. "You have a real gift for this, Monica," Ashley's father told me after reviewing our business plan for expansion. Whatever path you choose in life, never forget that you built something valuable from scratch during one of the hardest periods anyone could face. His words meant more than he could know. For years, I had been told implicitly and explicitly that I was less valuable, less worthy of love and attention than my sister. Now evidence to the contrary was mounting with each successful business decision I made. The broken girl who had sobbed in English class was transforming into someone new, someone who derived her sense of worth not from parental approval, but from her own capabilities and achievements. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it was no longer defining me. It was fueling me. By my 17th birthday, our educational technology startup, now officially named Study Smarter, had grown beyond anything I could have imagined 2 years earlier. We had expanded to 27 schools across 3 districts, hired 15 part-time content creators, and developed a subscription model that provided steady revenue. Anthony and I had become equal partners in every sense, his technical brilliance complementing my business instincts and marketing strategies. We worked seamlessly together, often finishing each other's sentences during pitches to school administrators. Our big breakthrough came when I decided to enter the regional Young Entrepreneurs competition. The application required a comprehensive business plan, financial projections, and a video presentation explaining our concept and growth strategy. "Are we ready for this level of exposure?" Anthony asked as we prepared our submission. "The competition attracts serious attention from investors and business media." "That's exactly why we need to do it," I replied. "We've proven our concept works. Now we need resources to scale nationally." Working nights and weekends, we polished our presentation to perfection. I rehearsed my pitch until I could deliver it in my sleep, emphasizing how Study Smarter democratized educational support and improved outcomes for students of all backgrounds. When the announcement came that we had made it to the final round, Ashley's entire family celebrated with a special dinner. "We're so proud of you," her mother said, hugging me tightly. "No matter what happens in the finals, what you've accomplished is remarkable." The day of the competition, I stood on stage before a panel of judges and an audience of business leaders, educators, and media representatives. My hands trembled slightly as I began my presentation, but my voice remained steady as I shared the story of Study Smarter, though not the personal circumstances that had catalyzed its creation. When the judges announced Study Smarter as the winner of the Under 18 category, the rush of validation was overwhelming. We received a $25,000 prize mentorship from successful entrepreneurs and, most importantly, media coverage that put our company on the map. The local newspaper ran a feature story with the headline, "Teen Entrepreneurs Revolutionize Study Help." The article included my photo and a quote about my vision for the company's future. It was this coverage that finally caught my parents' attention. After nearly 2 years of minimal communication, my phone suddenly lit up with a message from my mother. "We just saw the article about your business. Why didn't you tell us it was so successful? We're so proud. Call us when you can." I stared at the message, emotions churning. Now they were interested. Now that others had validated my worth, they wanted to claim association. The irony was painful. I didn't call, but I did respond with a brief message. "Thanks. Been very busy with the business and school. Hope your travels are going well." Their subsequent messages became increasingly frequent and warm, peppered with questions about the company and mentions of connections they had, who might be helpful to me. I maintained polite but distant responses, unwilling to give them access to this part of my life they had played no role in creating. With our newfound resources and visibility, Anthony and I applied to prestigious business schools with strong entrepreneurship programs. My application essays practically wrote themselves. I had a compelling story of building a successful company while overcoming significant personal challenges. The acceptance letters began arriving in spring of my senior year. Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and Wharton all offered places with Stanford and MIT, including substantial scholarships based on my entrepreneurial achievements. The day of high school graduation arrived with a bittersweet quality. Ashley's parents threw me a graduation party that brought tears to my eyes with its thoughtfulness. My teachers and mentors attended along with friends I'd made through the entrepreneurship program. Ms. Russell gave me a beautiful journal with an inscription, "To new beginnings built on your own strength." My parents, who had finally returned from their extended world tour, sent a generic graduation card with a check. They had asked to attend the ceremony, but I had declined, unwilling to pretend we were a normal family for the benefit of appearances. I chose Stanford, attracted by its proximity to Silicon Valley and its strong support for student entrepreneurs. Anthony selected MIT as his interests had evolved toward artificial intelligence applications in education. Though we would be running Study Smarter from opposite coasts, our partnership remained solid, reinforced by trust built through adversity. College brought new challenges and opportunities. I expanded my network, refined my business acumen, and continued growing Study Smarter with the advantage of Stanford's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We secured angel investment to develop a more sophisticated platform and expand our content to college-level courses. During my sophomore year, I met Jacob in a business ethics class. Tall with thoughtful brown eyes and a quiet confidence, he challenged my ideas without dismissing them. Our classroom debates evolved into coffee discussions, then dinner dates, and eventually a relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. Unlike others, who seemed impressed by my company's success, Jacob was more interested in the person behind the business. When I finally shared the full story of my parents' abandonment, he listened without interruption, then said, "They missed out on knowing an extraordinary person. That's their loss, not a reflection of your worth." With Jacob's encouragement, I began therapy to address the abandonment trauma that still occasionally surfaced in moments of stress or uncertainty. My therapist helped me recognize patterns of seeking validation through achievement and develop healthier ways of affirming my inherent worth. "Success is a wonderful thing," she told me, "but you deserve love and belonging regardless of what you achieve." Those sessions were often painful, excavating buried hurts and examining beliefs about myself that had formed in the shadow of parental rejection. But gradually, I began to separate my past experiences from my present reality and future potential. Meanwhile, Study Smarter continued to thrive. Jacob, with his background in software development, joined our team as Chief Technology Officer, working alongside Anthony to create an even more robust platform. By junior year, we had users in all 50 states and were beginning to explore international markets. I graduated from Stanford with honors and a thriving company that had evolved from study guides to a comprehensive educational technology platform serving both K-12 and college students. At 22, I was the CEO of a company valued at over $10 million, with 30 full-time employees and offices in Palo Alto and Boston. The scared, rejected 15-year-old girl had become a confident, successful woman who defined herself not by others' abandonment, but by her own resilience and vision. At 32, I stood at the window of my corner office in downtown San Francisco, watching the fog roll in over the bay. Study Smarter had grown into EduLift, a multinational educational technology company valued at over $200 million, with our platform serving millions of students worldwide. Jacob and I had married 3 years earlier in a small ceremony surrounded by the people who had truly supported us, Ashley and her family, Ms. Russell Anthony and his wife, and the core team members who had been with us from the early days. My parents received an invitation, but were seated with extended family, not in positions of honor they had never earned. Life had settled into a rhythm of purpose and fulfillment. Jacob and I had purchased a beautiful home in Marin County, where we enjoyed weekends hiking the coastal trails. Our marriage was strong, built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values about what truly mattered in life. I had largely made peace with my past. Through therapy and the passage of time, I'd come to understand that my parents' treatment of me reflected their limitations, not my worthiness. I maintained minimal contact with them, holiday cards, occasional brief calls, but had established firm boundaries that protected my hard-won emotional health. Then came the email that disrupted my carefully constructed equilibrium. "Monica," it began, "we need to talk. Your father has been sued for medical malpractice and lost his position at the hospital. Our financial situation is dire. We've had to sell the house. We know we have no right to ask, but we're hoping you might consider helping your family during this difficult time. Love, Mom." I stared at the screen, conflicted emotions churning. After years of emotional neglect and literal abandonment, they were reaching out. Not to make amends, but because they needed something from me. Jacob found me still staring at the email an hour later. "What's wrong?" he asked, concerned by my expression. I showed him the message. "I don't know how to feel about this." He read it carefully before responding. "What do you want to do? Not what do you feel obligated to do, but what do you actually want?" The question gave me pause. For so much of my life, I had sought my parents' approval and love. Now they were essentially asking for my help, creating an opportunity for me to show them who I had become, despite their absence. Part of me, the wounded child who still resided within, wanted to reject them as they had rejected me. But the woman I had become recognized that perpetuating pain wasn't the path to healing. I think I need to see them, I said finally. Not to rescue them, but to close this chapter properly. I arranged a dinner meeting at a neutral restaurant. As the date approached, anxiety and old insecurities surfaced, but I reminded myself that I was no longer powerless or dependent on their validation. The evening of the dinner, Jacob squeezed my hand encouragingly before I left. "Remember who you are," he said simply. "All of who you are, not just in relation to them." I arrived at the restaurant first, deliberately choosing this position of power. When my parents entered, I was struck by how they had aged. My father's confident posture had diminished, his shoulders slightly stooped. My mother's carefully maintained appearance showed signs of strain, her designer clothes replaced by simpler attire. Surprisingly, Lily followed behind them. Now 27, she resembled our mother, but with a gentleness in her expression that reminded me of her childhood self. "Monica," my mother said, embracing me awkwardly. "You look wonderful. Success clearly agrees with you." My father shook my hand formally. "Thank you for meeting with us. It's been too long." We settled into uncomfortable small talk as we ordered drinks and appetizers. They asked about EduLift, making comments that revealed they had researched my company, but understood little about what we actually did or the journey that had created it. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "I suppose we should address the elephant in the room. As we mentioned in our email, we're in a difficult financial position." "The malpractice suit was unjust," my mother added quickly. "Your father was an excellent surgeon. The patient had complications no one could have foreseen." I nodded, maintaining a neutral expression. "I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties. What exactly are you hoping for from me?" My father looked uncomfortable. "We've had to downsize significantly. We thought perhaps given your success, you might consider helping us get back on our feet. A loan or perhaps a position at your company for Lily, who recently completed her master's in communications." I turned to Lily, who looked mortified. "Did you ask them to approach me about a job?" She shook her head. "No, I actually told them it was inappropriate." "Monica," my mother interjected, "we know things between us have been complicated, but we're still family." The word family ignited something in me. Not anger, but clarity. "Family," I repeated slowly. "That's an interesting choice of word. When I was 15, you decided I wasn't family enough to include in your world adventure. You left me with strangers who made it clear daily that I was unwanted, a burden. You chose to be a complete family without me." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We made mistakes. We were different people then with different priorities." "Were you?" I asked quietly. "Or were you always the same people who simply show interest in me when it benefits you?" My mother's expression hardened. "If you're just going to dredge up ancient history—" "It's not ancient to me," I interrupted. "It shaped who I became. Every rejection, every comparison to Lily, every time you made me feel less valuable, it all became part of my story. But here's what you don't understand. I succeeded not because of your support, but despite its absence." Lily, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. "She's right. What you did was wrong. What you did to both of us was wrong." Our parents looked at her in surprise. "To you too?" my father asked. Lily nodded, tears forming. "You put me on a pedestal and Monica in the basement. You made me the golden child and her the scapegoat. Do you know how much pressure that created? How lonely it was? I lost my sister because you couldn't love us equally." Her words hit me with unexpected force. I had never considered how the favoritism had affected Lily, how it had isolated her as surely as it had me, just in a different way. "I've spent years in therapy trying to undo the damage," Lily continued. "The expectations, the perfectionism, the fear of disappointing you. Meanwhile, Monica built something extraordinary without any support. She's the strong one. She always was." Silence fell over the table as our parents absorbed this unexpected, unified front. Finally, I spoke again. "I'm not going to punish you for the past by refusing to help now. That's not who I am. I'll help you financially, not with a loan, but with a monthly stipend that will allow you to live modestly, but comfortably." My father began to thank me, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. This help comes with conditions. First, you will both attend family therapy with a therapist of my choosing. Second, you will respect the boundaries I establish in our relationship going forward. And third, you will acknowledge, truly acknowledge, the harm your choices caused. My mother looked ready to argue, but seemed to think better of it. We can agree to those terms. Good, I replied, because I'm not doing this out of obligation. I'm doing it because helping others is a core value in my life, even those who haven't always helped me. After dinner, Lily walked me to my car. I've wanted to reach out to you for years, she admitted, but I was ashamed of my role in what happened, even though I was just a child. You were never the problem, I told her. Feeling decades of resentment begin to dissolve. We were both just playing the roles they assigned us. We exchanged contact information and made plans for coffee the following week. The beginning of the sister relationship we should have had all along. In the months that followed, I established a foundation specifically aimed at supporting foster children's educational needs and entrepreneurial aspirations. The Monica Wright Foundation provided scholarships, mentorship, and startup funding for young people whose biological families had failed them, but whose potential remained limitless. I became an advocate for reforming the foster care system, using my platform as a successful CEO to highlight the challenges faced by children bounced between homes or discarded by the people who should have protected them. The relationship with my parents evolved slowly through the mandatory therapy sessions. There were moments of genuine remorse alongside frustrating instances of justification for their past behavior. I maintained firm boundaries, accepting their role in my life, without allowing them power over my emotional well-being. Jacob and I started our own family, welcoming a daughter whom we cherished for her unique qualities, and a son whose different personality we celebrated equally. I was determined that no child of mine would ever question their inherent worth or feel they needed to earn parental love. The best revenge is not just success, I told a group of foster teens at a foundation event. It's creating a life so full of purpose and connection that the people who rejected you become footnotes in your story, not its defining chapter. My journey from abandoned daughter to CEO had taught me that resilience isn't just about surviving hardship. It's about transforming it into fuel for growth. The wound of parental rejection had scarred but also strengthened me, forcing me to define my worth independent of others' validation. I found freedom in forgiveness, not the kind that excuses harm, but the kind that releases its power over your future. My parents' choices would always be part of my history, but they no longer controlled my happiness or defined my identity. The most profound lesson came full circle when a young woman who had received one of our foundation scholarships launched her own successful company 5 years after aging out of foster care. You showed me it was possible, she told me, that being unwanted by some doesn't make you unwanted by all, that family can be created, not just born into. Her words reminded me that our greatest pain, when transformed, often becomes our greatest gift to others. By sharing my story and creating pathways for those facing similar rejection, the abandoned child I once was found purpose in her pain. Have you ever felt rejected by someone who should have loved you unconditionally? How did you transform that pain into strength? Let me know in the comments below, and if my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming adversity. And remember, sometimes the people who leave your life create space for those who truly deserve to be there. Thank you for listening to my story.